if somebody has a degree already and they're like, 25, 35, 45, I don't know that I'd recommend going back and getting another degree. I think like a boot camp is good enough, because also too, like, don't discount the work experience that you've had, because that is valuable, especially if you're going to become an analyst in that domain. You now have business experience that a lot of the analysts coming out of university do not have. So it is about positioning. It's about working with somebody who can help you position yourself well to land a role. And it's about being okay, like going in the direction of a path, maybe hitting some roadblocks, adjusting, and continuing.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they're using data to solve the world's problems. We're sharing all the tips, tricks, and nerdy fun bits to make you the best data professional you can be. Today with us, we have Kristen. How are you doing today?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. I love your intro.
Thank you so much. And thank you for coming on the show again for the second time, actually.
Thank you for having me.
I know the first time that you were on the show, it was season 1, and we're now in season 4. Can you believe that? Yes.
No, that's wild. Congrats on 4 seasons.
Thank you so much. So I know that we've went through the whole origin story of Kristen, but in case we have new audience members and those that don't really know you, can you please tell us your origin story and how you got to where you are today in your career?
Sure, of course. So I have the old school traditional background. I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics, a master's degree in statistics, and I finished those before the term data scientist really existed. But I started in the utility industry doing econometric time series analysis and forecasting, and that was probably one of my most focused roles. I was building neural networks to forecast hourly electric load, and then a ton of ARIMA models for gas and electricity. From there, I moved into healthcare, where I was doing things like motivating people to get their colorectal cancer screenings through using data. And then the majority of my career was, or I shouldn't talk about was, my career's not over, but I spent a lot of time in e-commerce doing your typical retention modeling, behavioral customer segmentation, lifetime value, that sort of stuff. I spent time at a couple different companies. And then in 2018, I started my own business, Data Moves Me, and that has brought me to all different places, working with different data types, playing with computer vision, building LLM-powered applications for a healthcare consultancy. I was the head of data science for MoneyGram. I also spent a lot of time working in the ML ops space for Comet. So yeah, the last couple years has been a little all over the place, but it's been an amazing ride in data, and just data in general has been so exciting the last couple years that, I'm just so happy I ended up here, because I don't know that it was so incredibly intentional, but yeah.
That's awesome. A lot of us data professionals, I feel like, was not intentional to get into the data field. And I just love hearing people's stories on how they kind of stumbled into data.
Yep.
I forgot that you worked at the utility industry. I also worked in utilities for a little bit there, and I found that to be a really, really interesting place for data.
Yeah. Well, and you learn so much. Like, I think about the move to working remote, which now I'm fully remote, and it's been a huge benefit to my family, but just learning. So, I got out of school with a technical degree. I didn't know about the setup of an organization, and I was supporting the supply chain org I knew nothing about any of that. And being able to sit in an office and really learn how the different departments were related and how they work together and be there to more physically see the type of work they do and how it benefits the organization, I think was like a really great start that, gave me like a foundation to sort of move from there to other places.
Absolutely. And you've worked in a lot of different industries too, which is really incredible. What would you say your favorite industry to work in is?
I have to say, like, and I don't even need to think for a second about the answer. For me, it has been e-commerce because I was specifically supporting the marketing function, and getting that background in marketing is a lot of what enabled me to be able to become a content creator, to be able to start my own business, to know how to. I mean, I worked for Constant Contact, so I have free email marketing for life from them. So I've been leveraging that now for like 8 years, which was a huge benefit. But just taking the time to do hundreds of hypothesis tests and understand consumer behavior has really helped me in so many different ways and has been just applicable to other things that I've ventured off into.
Yeah. That's an interesting topic too. The customer behavior or behavioral analytics in general is a really, really neat space. You learn a lot about how people react, how you react. You're just like, oh, that makes sense why I do things the way that I do.
No, but I think the most important thing that I learned, because we'd run a hypothesis test and I'd be like, oh, this is silly, and maybe it's a control and two tests. And I'm like, obviously it's going to be B. And then it wouldn't be. And it was like a really good lesson in how the demographics and the type of customer that we were attracting was not like me. They didn't think like me. The answer was not obvious. And had that not been blatantly put in my face, I'd still think that the answers were obvious, because like there would have been no counter to teach me otherwise. And so and that again is like a huge learning to apply to the rest of my life as well. This isn't like a philosophical discussion, but in terms of like not making assumptions in general, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And a lot of the work that you do is kind of more involved than just the typical data analyst career, right? You really get into like that machine learning side of it. So for those folks that may not be familiar with the machine learning side, can you kind of define what that is and why you enjoy that part so much?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because my journey into machine learning was I started with statistical modeling. And machine learning is often you are trying to predict something or classify something. And when you work with statistical models, you're sometimes using the same models, right? You're using linear regression, you're using logistic regression. There's models that you might use for statistical purposes where you're often interpreting the different variables that are in the model, the coefficients of those. And saying like, hey, this variable has this impact when we're controlling for other variables. But when you're using it from a machine learning perspective, I learned that a lot of times, like, they don't care as much about the assumptions underlying the model, or being able to like interpreting the model is not as paramount, although we've made huge strides in explainable AI and being able to look at feature importance and all of those things. So like they do care. I'm not saying that they don't care, but the way they think about it is different. But really it was, if we get great predictions, that means we have a good model. Like if our model is reliable and it's working, that's it. Whereas statisticians are a little bit more think about the underlying assumptions and the model fit a little bit differently because they're interpreting the coefficients rather than just caring about you know the end result. And really, when you're in I mean, I guess you can have a lot of the same use cases, right? When I'm in healthcare, like they both cared about being able to understand the drivers and they cared about having an accurate prediction. But in a lot of ways, because of the way that, the goal is to a lot of times put things in production. The machine learning route is sort of, something that you see a lot more of now, and that prediction is really what drives the ROI.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very helpful in a lot of, if not every company out there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are your favorite machine learning projects to work on, or projects or like problems that you can solve with these?
I mean, so for the person who is just getting into data, I would highly recommend looking at all those typical use cases. If you're building a retention model, it's going to be, measures of tenure and measures of engagement that are going to fit into your model. And then you need to think about, um, if somebody's only been a customer for 2 months, well, they're much more likely to leave than somebody who's been here for 14 years. So you need to be very careful about making sure that that's not a confounder, but at the same time, it is a variable in your model. But so I love those traditional ones. And like, you want to look at customer lifetime value. When you're building out your portfolio, you want to make sure that it's something that a hiring manager is really going to um, say that, like, you understand the business. And when I was taking on these projects in the beginning, they were new to me. I didn't build a retention model in grad school. I learned that like in business, and almost every project that I've taken on, I've learned while doing it. So at the time of starting that project, it was my favorite project. But I absolutely love trying new things. So everyone has been exciting, but I think one of the most exciting things for me has been when I got into computer vision and I started working with object detection, and there was so much to learn that I didn't already know, about how to work with image data. And it's also one of those projects where the output is just often more fun to look at. Like if you share a video with pose estimation overlaid on top, like it's going to do really well on LinkedIn because you have this thing to show. And so, I mean, that's sort of like a vanity thing, but I do enjoy the projects where I have something that I can easily articulate what I did and show you how cool it is. Because if I show numbers, like that's fun, but it's not the same. It's not the same as having a video.
Yes, I agree. It's very fun. And because you brought up this computer vision, we're going to head into the fun bits now.
Okay.
So you are working on this computer vision project, which ultimately sparked this creation of a whole book called Susie's School Bus Solution. So first off, talk about this project that you got into.
Yeah, so I started working for Comet ML, which is an ML ops platform. So they, focus on making sure that you can understand your data lineage, you can do experiment tracking, model monitoring, and as a developer advocate, I had to have a project so that I had something to talk about online. And I knew that object detection was going to give me something that I could show that people might get excited about. And I really wanted to do something that would benefit my life, because so many projects you work on and you're not truly excited about them because they're just not that interesting, or it's something that you're going to work on and then it's just going to like sit on your hard drive forever. And so even today, like 2 or 3 years later, I still get school bus texts every single school day, because I decided that I was going to build a computer vision system that would see the school bus passing my house. And this only works because the school bus passes my house, picks somebody up, comes back, and then picks my kids up. So I get a text when the bus passes the first time, and then I have a 5-minute heads up that that the bus is coming, which was great for me because especially a person with ADHD, I'm like cooking an English muffin and like not even noticing the time. And, I understand that like other parents are totally on top of it, but I wasn't. And this has been a godsend for me. And then after I built it, and people were excited about it. And now, a couple years later, there are a lot of like bus tracking systems coming out that are a different sort of model, but people are realizing that this would benefit a lot of parents. Um, but so after it came out, my friend Jordan Morrow was able to publish a children's book, and he was actually second author. So first author was Chandra Donaldson, and the book was uh, the data detective at the carnival. Because I know there's other people out there. I'm a parent. If I see a data book, I'm buying it. I love sharing data with my kids. When I get invited to speak, not to speak, but to like be a mystery reader at school or whatever, I'm bringing a data book. But anyway, so I saw my friend Jordan had published a children's book, and it was something that I had always wanted to do. And so I had the opportunity to write Susie's School Bus Solution, and it was so important to me because there's so many children's books out there that tell you about what it's like to be a police officer, or what it's like to that teach you sort of about life, and there's nothing really or about sort of what the data process looks like. And as AI becomes even more huge, right, these models aren't technically like a mystery. Like, sure, they're really deep neural networks, and in a sense it is a black box, but that concept of we take data, we build a model, and then after the predictions come out of that model, we write some code to do a thing, right? Like, I just wanted to demystify what is actually happening with these models that kids are really interacting with every day. Like, even if you don't have a school bus detector, you're using, YouTube, you're using Google, you're using all these things that are using data to make decisions about what you see. And so I just hoped that I could just bring a little bit of demystifying how these types of things work.
That's awesome. So, walk us through kind of the creation and writing of the book itself.
Yeah. So it actually didn't take me that long to write the story. And it's interesting, if you're somebody who's looking to write a book, I feel like if you are a content creator and you're sharing your data work, um, you know, it's not it's not out of the realm of possibility to find a publisher who will, if you have a topic that is something that they need in their library, that they'd be like willing to work with you, right? Like Pact, I know, is like a lot of times like really looking for people that are able to talk about the topics that they're interested in. With a children's book, it's much harder. And so I was just so fortunate because Chandra had actually looked for years, and she had pitched, tens of publishers, and had a lot of difficulty. And so my experience was actually really streamlined. Like, Jordan made an intro, um, and the publisher was like, well, I'm going away for Christmas, but in January, let's meet up. And so from early December till January 15th, I wrote the whole book. I came up with a whole marketing plan. I looked at color palettes. I decided, which stanzas, because it's written completely in rhyme, would be on which page, like how many stanzas to put on a page. And so I went into that meeting and I was like, I have this. And he was like, great, find an illustrator. And so then I found an illustrator. And so that was January, and the book was published in May. And it was, number one in a number of categories: children's software, children's computer books, all sorts of stuff for the whole first month that it was out. So it did well. I was really proud. I had a really smooth experience compared to probably what a lot of other people experience.
Mm-hmm. And what was your marketing plan like? Were you able to go to different like libraries or schools and read your book to kids, and how did they respond?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I have, right, like I already said, I have Constant Contact for Life. So I had my email marketing series, I had my posts for LinkedIn, I had my posts for Reddit. I did a reading at Barnes and Nobles because it is for sale on Barnes and Nobles. I've read it to my son's classroom. We went to the MIT museum to see one of their exhibits, and like I pitched it, and they didn't ever get back to me. But that was sort of the thing. Like if I was going somewhere where there was a cute little, shop, I was going to pack my book and I was going to give them a copy with a little note in it and my name and my marketing sheet and pitch to like, hey, will you carry this book? And so that's been fun too, because I just like even just starting my business in 2018, the fun has been in figuring out how you do something that you've never done before and trying to grow something, and that's what like I really enjoy. And so I've enjoyed that a lot about the book, and I'm super proud of it.
That's amazing. When you presented it to the class, how did the kids respond? Did they interact, or how many questions did they ask and whatnot?
No, there was like five hands that went up afterwards, and so these were first graders. And so their hands went up and they were just like, I just wanted to tell you I loved it, whatever. It was written at a level where they can follow what was going on. You get the data, you build a model. Um, and there's a real story there. Like Susan was missing the bus, and then now, she's so proud of herself for building this thing with her mom. And actually, the teacher, one of the school staff, emailed me only 2 days ago and was like, "We're doing a segment on AI in second grade, and I was wondering where I can get a copy of your book because I know you wrote a book on AI." So it has been, yes, no, it's been, and even adults really enjoy it too because adults don't know what data scientists do. Like I read at Barnes and Nobles, and one of the moms afterwards was like, that is the most I have ever learned about how these types of systems work. I had no idea.
That's amazing. I read the book and I know all about AI, and I found it very enjoyable. It was really, really well written. I liked that it did rhyme. That's very you. it it's great.
Oh, thank you.
And you have another book that will be available very soon, right? And I think that one's about data cleaning and time series. Was that also tied to a particular project?
So
Tell us
this one
about it.
is not tied to a particular project. It was tied to the fact that I have two kids, and because I don't want my son in therapy, I need to make sure that he has a book too. Um, but this is, I mean, time series has always been one of my favorite areas. And I think that it's also something that, it's more like business analysis and really teaching you to think critically about, um, your sales and stuff like that. Because really what it starts out as is Harry has a lemonade stand. And, obviously if he doesn't bring enough lemons, he misses out on sales. If he brings too many lemons, they go to waste and he has a mess. And it sort of brings you through like, you know, he has to write down his data. And that includes he needs to know about other factors that could impact it, like the weather, how many people attended, just different things that you'd want to put in a time series model, but that also impact the type of sales that you're going to have. And so then it's about the data cleaning. It's about, you know, I'm like stumbling over myself right here, but basically, it ends up being a time series model, and it's not real, but it's built on the number of cups sold, because we know that, for each cup, you're going to use about a lemon or a lemon and a half. And then you can do that math to understand how many lemons you need for the show based on historical data and what you know about the weather for the weekend, and whether or not it's an event that typically does well. But I think that it, like, a lemonade stand is something that most kids are like really excited to do. Obviously, they don't do it at this scale, but it really gets them thinking about business. And it also ties to the fact that like data analytics allows us to answer real business questions and like teaches them like how that sort of fits. I mean, it's only probably 1,000 words because it's a children's story, but there's like a lot of undertone there.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I can't wait to read that one too. You mentioned earlier that you really love to learn new things, and I ask this to all of my guests. And how do you go about learning those new things? Like, what resources do you use?
I mean, today, honestly, it's a lot of ChatGPT, and I think that you need to be careful. Or Claude or Copilot. I'll sort of use them all. I sort of just canceled my Claude because I found that I was just always running out of credits in the middle of a project. You do need to be careful because I'm coming from a place where I can think really critically about the output and understand if it feels right to me in a way that I think that people who don't have so much time as a data scientist might find themselves going down the wrong path. Or I've had experiences where ChatGPT will bring me in circles. I was doing an audio data project where I was trying to do like vector similarity search for songs to find songs that were like my daughter's dance solo last year so that I could find something I loved just as much this year. And I that project failed for a couple of reasons. So Spotify had changed their API in November, and some of the data that was available before is no longer available. And then my options for getting songs are, you can only get like 30-second clips on Spotify, and that's really not long enough to have the full context of a song. Your other option is to steal them from YouTube, but it's really hard to search YouTube and get quality results of what you're looking for because there's going to be a lot of garbage in there. And I didn't really need to go into all that backstory, but again, that was a new project that I tried. It failed, but it was heavy chat GPT. I had never worked with audio data before, but I felt like I had like I knew sort of where I was going. But it is about why chat GPT is possibly difficult because when I ran into one of the problem was that Spotify had changed its API. ChatGPT didn't know that. So ChatGPT was telling me, well, create a new developer account. And I'm like, that's not going to fix anything. And then after a while, it's like, well, why don't you set up a VPN? Maybe it's that like, you're in the US and you can't, and it's like, no, like I'm not going to set up a VPN. Like then I finally went to the docs and it was like, okay, but if you're not, you can go in circles if you don't know when it's time to say, okay, I'm going to stop and I'm going to go read the docs. And then at that point, you need to be able to read the docs and implement it. From there. But that is, I love taking courses. I just took an algorithmic trading course that I loved. I'm now live in the market it's been like 3 months, and that is a machine learning model that predicts like momentum over a 21-day period. And I'm loving that. I'm having so much fun. But it is a mix of courses, just diving in, yeah, I'd say talking to other people, but I don't know that I talk to that many other people when I'm trying. It like really is. I'm gonna sit down. I read books. I do read books. Actually, I only read nonfiction. You know, right now I'm reading stock trading books, and before it was, how to launch, how to, do a product launch, how to just all these. Anything, as long as it's nonfiction, I'll read it if it's about something I'm excited about right now.
No. It sounds like you use a lot of different Gen AI platforms. Can you
Mhm.
break down like which ones are your favorite and why? Because I know that a lot of them are very useful in certain contexts or with certain projects.
Yeah, it's tough because I think I prefer Claude for code, but I was using the $17 a month plan and I just kept running out of credits. And I think I could probably reconfigure it so that I'm like, you know, less resource intensive in each of my runs, and maybe that would solve the problem. But I really always sort of default to ChatGPT. I was using Copilot 2 in, VS Code, but I just didn't feel like it was that much better. And I don't like sharing my Windows space because I use 3 monitors. I don't even know if maybe I should have looked at it. Maybe I'd be able to open it up, but I just didn't feel like it had that much extra context, given that it was already embedded in VS Code, but I still felt like I was, doing the same things. And ChatGPT has a lot of functionality where you can, you know, upload documents and video and, well, I don't know about video, but images so that's where I found myself. I did just recently play with like the AWS SageMaker notebook. That seems to have a lot of integration and context that I don't think I've seen before. And right, like, so I'm not an expert. Like, what I'm saying has been my personal experience, and there may be, and everything moves so fast that by the time you hear this, there may be extra functionality that like has come out, or that like I just didn't know existed in the beginning, but this is just my personal story of how I'm using it. But SageMaker seemed to have, it understood your like the context of your data that might be living, somewhere that isn't right in your notebook, and it could like understand the schema. And that's obviously tremendously helpful when you're trying to explain something to ChatGPT and it's like this, and you're like, no, but my data's structured this way, and like, and I've got this and that in there, and why don't you know this? But still, these tools are making me go so much faster than I have before.
Yeah. How much of time are you spending like reviewing the output to make sure that it's correct? Like,
It
and
really
is
depends
like
on what
saving
I'm
you time?
doing. I mean, so like, yeah, when I get a code block printed out, I'm looking at it. If it looks like didn't, it didn't like meet what I was actually looking for, I'm going to iterate in ChatGPT. Then I'm going to get to something that looks like it works. Then I'm going to put it in my IDE. Then I'm going to run it. Maybe it doesn't run. And then instead of looking at the traceback myself, I'm not going to lie, I screenshot the traceback. I put it in ChatGPT. I let ChatGPT tell me what's going on there and, maybe why. And then sometimes that doesn't even work either. Like it'll say like, oh, well, the library doesn't support that variable that we told you to pass. So like try passing this one, and I pass that one, and then it still doesn't work. And it's like, okay, I'm going to go to the docs. So I do lean on it, I'd say pretty heavily. I don't know. ChatGPT is like a good friend of mine now.
Yeah, that's good to hear. It's good to hear. It's helpful for sure. So what advice do you have for any folks out there that are wanting to get into the data space or the machine learning space?
It's hard because I don't even like when any statistics talk about like data in general, right? Because it's such a vast landscape, and people are coming into data from so many different areas, and there's just so many different opportunities, and they all require different skills. I mean, the base is obviously your like SQL, understanding how to work with data. I recommend Python, understanding pandas and NumPy. I recommend taking a course that's like specifically for data analytics. Maven obviously has great ones. Business science is another one that I think is fantastic. Because you can get so far that way. If you try and go back and forth with ChatGPT, like gonna get some misinformation. You're gonna have, it's just very hard to put your own project plan together. And there's people who have already set up project plans for you. And I know that there are people out there on the internet that are like, there's these courses that say become a, data analyst in 6 months. And, and is that right? But like, no, like you're going to go and it's going to be somebody who's really passionate about data. And they're going to say, hey, you need to understand this SQL, these Python libraries, this type of modeling or not, or you need to put a portfolio together. Here's what should be in your portfolio. And you have that guide, right? And it doesn't even need to be that expensive, but you do need somebody to guide you. Because if you're trying to do it from YouTube, you're going to like struggle. And the truth is that, yes, maybe some of these courses aren't, because there's like a wide world of courses. Maybe they're not as, maybe some that you're going to find aren't as rigorous as they need to be, but you're going to get a foundation, and then you're going to apply to a job. You're going to go into an interview, and you're going to have a, SQL test, and they're going to ask you to write a query that does X, and you're going to leave there. And so it is true that, I've seen people ask crazy SQL questions, so like one bad interview is not anything. But if you've left, 5 interviews and you've failed all the tech tests, like, that you need to brush up on SQL, but you know where to look and you have a foundation. And you just go from there. It's iterative. So yeah, no, I think I still recommend courses. I wouldn't, if somebody has a degree already and they're like, 25, 35, 45, I don't know that I'd recommend going back and getting another degree. I think like a boot camp is good enough, because also too, like, don't discount the work experience that you've had, because that is valuable, especially if you're going to become an analyst in that domain. You now have business experience that a lot of the analysts coming out of university do not have. So it is about positioning. It's about working with somebody who can help you position yourself well to land a role. And it's about being okay, like going in the direction of a path, maybe hitting some roadblocks, adjusting and continuing, right?
Yeah, that's amazing advice.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so very much, Kristen, for coming on the show with us. If anybody has any questions for you, where can they find and or follow you?
I spend a ton of time on LinkedIn, so it is just look me up on LinkedIn and I am there.
Amazing. And we'll share some links to the books as well in the description. And as always, folks, happy learning.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Data Podcast for Nerds. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you want to transition your career and become a data professional, follow me on LinkedIn for even more tips, tricks, and nerdy fun bits.